All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. So I'm Andrew, aka Marriage Destroying Mindgasms, and I'm going to talk about the famous comedian, podcaster, and MMA commentator Joe Rogan, of course, whose podcast I love, in spite of some disagreements with him sometimes. Sparring with Matt Walsh over gay marriage, and Matt Walsh is on the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's network, of course, and he's a conservative pundit, and he's against gay marriage. And I'm wondering, not seriously, but half seriously, if Walsh is secretly afraid that dicks are delicious, which is a Joe Rogan joke from one of his comedy specials that I saw Kyle Kalinske, the progressive YouTuber, mention in his video that reminded me of that. So I thought I should put that as the subtitle of this. And obviously, some people who are against gay marriage are homophobic because they're closeted homosexuals, but obviously a lot of people are just straight religious theocrats who don't like it, but for those religious reasons. But yeah, let's get into the debate here.
The Joe Rogan experience.
I think of marriage is a certain thing, which is the context for procreation, for the building of the nuclear family.
What about people that get married that don't have kids? Are you opposed?
There you go. Great objection right away. The nuclear family, this idea of two men and women having kids, that's what marriage is supposed to be. Like, what if people are that? What if a straight man and a straight woman are married, but they don't procreate? Or if and also if people procreate outside of marriage, then is that not the same? Is that not the same type of procreation because it's not blessed by God? And so it doesn't. It's just this narrow conception of what marriage is, and it's not logically consistent or coherent at all.
Opposed to that? What if they get married, they decide, you know what, we don't need kids. I'm going to get fixed. You get your tubes tied. Let's travel the world.
Well, what do you mean am I opposed to it? I mean, I think that every married couple should be open to life.
But what if they don't want to? Are you opposed to them being married? If marriage is only for procreation and to bond a family together, what about people that are deeply in love that never want to have children?
I don't think it's not only procreation, but that is one of the fundamental definitional aspects of it.
So Matt Walsh is backing up a little bit, which is good because Joe Rogan made very simple and convincing arguments pointing out the logical holes in his propositions.
Of course, there's more to marriage just than that.
And what about people that are infertile? They fall in love and they realize that they can't have babies. They don't really necessarily want to adopt. Is that okay for them to be married? Because then by definition, marriage falls into a completely different thing, because then it's a bond of love. It's a union of love.
Sure. I mean, that doesn't change the nature of marriage, though. It's a little bit like
it does change the nature of marriage. If one of the fundamental aspects of marriage is the idea to procreate, and you're not doing that because you're a gay couple, that's not actually any functionally different from a straight couple who are infertile and can have kids and decide that they don't want to adopt or decide to not have kids for any number of other reasons, of course.
I say that what's the definition of a woman? Well, a woman is someone who by her nature can conceive children in her womb and bear children. And then the response is always, well, what about women who are infertile? Does that destroy your definition of woman? And it doesn't, because it's still a woman's nature to bear children. Not every woman will, and there will be disease.
I think to be charitable to him here, if what he's trying to say is that all women have the not necessarily the ability to have children, but they have almost all women have the reproductive organs and biological capability to bear children unless they're infertile. It's like a common thing for women to be capable of having children, even if women choose to not have children. But that still, again, just ignores the fact that some women are infertile. And so by his definition, that would mean not a woman, unless it has to, his definition of a woman, just like his definition of marriage, has to fit some of these categories rather, but not all of them. But if they have to fit all of these guidelines for what the definition of marriage is or what the definition of a woman is, then these are intellectually bankrupt arguments.
Disease and infertility and old age and all these things that will preclude that, but it's still of her nature to do so. And I would say the same thing for marriage. I mean, it's
the way he's saying that, of her nature, sounds like a really theological way to say it. Like, I shouldn't say theological, theocratic way to say it, because there are a lot of Christians, like there are many left-leaning Christians in my own family who are like small p progressive Christians, and they don't believe that they're not against gay marriage, and they don't say that a woman's nature is to bear children. Like, that's really old-fashioned conservative interpretations of the Bible.
Natural in a marriage for procreation to occur. It's not always going to happen in reality, though, but that's still one of the natural functions of marriage. And married couples who can't conceive children.
But you don't have to be married to have children, though. That used to be a more common cultural thing, and maybe he's implying that we should get back to that, which is a stupid, authoritarian, conservative Christian idea, but he's not saying that.
Children, there are other ways to be parents, like adoption, for example.
If they want to. Right.
Sure.
But if people want to be married and don't want to ever have children, are you opposed to them being married?
Well, I wouldn't advocate a law that would prevent it.
But would it change the definition of what their marriage is to you because they don't want to have a family? They just want to have a loving bond?
I think this would be a couple that is rejecting one of the fundamental aspects of marriage, and that they should be.
So a couple is inferior to other couples if they decide to not have children, because according to him, that's what God thinks, because of his religious belief, because that's the underlying belief beneath all of what he's saying here. And it's good, though, that he said there shouldn't be a law against it, because if he didn't say that, there are really obviously authoritarian implications. If you're, for example, making gay marriage illegal, as used to be the case in the States until much less recently here in Canada. And if he's, like, by that logic, though, he should also outlaw any couples who decide to not have children. So infertile, a couple in which the man and or the woman are infertile, or people who just, they can produce children but decide not to because they're anti-natalist, or like they don't want to bring someone into this world full of suffering and they think that's unfair and they're really pessimistic, or any other number of reasons. Maybe they're hardcore environmentalists and they don't want to make a carbon footprint or some shit like that. There are any number of reasons by which, if he did want that kind of stuff to be outlawed, all of those types of people should be outlawed too. So by the same token, if he's changing if he's changing the definition of the word marriage according to this, then all of these groups of people are not technically married according to his definition.
They should be open to life. I would hope that in the future they would be, but
isn't that just a personal choice?
It is.
You can have a very fulfilling life if you just follow your pursuits and your dreams and your interests, and you find someone that shares those interests with you and you share time together. It's very fulfilling and loving.
Yeah, it's a personal choice, and that I'm not advocating for like a law that says that you if you're married you have to have X number of kids.
Yeah, like I said, I appreciate that he's not saying that there should be a law instituted for this, because that means he's not totally full-blown authoritarian. He's just 90% of the way there.
But then why are you opposed to two gay people doing that?
Well, because again, it's not about choice. It's about what this institution, marriage is an institution, and what is it, and what purpose does it serve? And
yeah, it's personal choice, like Joe Rogan was saying. It is about choice. It's about whether you choose to have children or not. It's not, and it's also about how you choose to define marriage. You're choosing to define marriage as being for procreation, but that's not the way a lot of other people look at it, including married heterosexual couples. Even if they do procreate, that's not necessarily the reason that they got married. They probably got married like they're in love, just like two gay guys or two lesbians, or like two trans people, or any like an heterosexual couple, of course, or any combination of people.
No, I do not agree with tearing down or changing this definition.
It's not changing the definition, though. It's not an objective definition. If you look in the dictionary, that it has to include procreation. Marriage is a legal contract, and often also a religious contract. And if you consider procreation to be part of that religious contract, then that's your choice. But that doesn't mean that other people who choose not to include that as an aspect of their definition are not actually married, or their marriage is inferior to your marriage in any way.
Because the people who have changed the definition haven't come up.
They didn't, though.
With a new one. So they say, well, that's not
they
what
didn't,
marriage is.
But they define it differently. So if you think that your definition is the original definition, then they actually did come up with a new definition by your own logic, because they define it based on whether two people love each other and want to be together, rather than whether they're a man or a woman, a man and a woman who want to have children.
So for thousands of years, we said marriage is the procreative union.
See, that's not true, though. This is the inaccurate depiction of history that conservatives like Matt Walsh say, like, like marriage is biologically natural between a man and a woman because it's always been that way, or at least for 1,000 years of human history, or most of human history. Whereas in reality, this idea of the nuclear family specifically, even more so than just the idea of marriage being between a man and a woman for the purposes of procreation, is a pretty new thing throughout history. Like, let's say during the Enlightenment or so, I would say that became more popular. I mean, there were marriages in medieval times, of course, and there wasn't gay marriage or anything like that, but a lot of marriages were political, and yeah, some of it was to have children. But look at Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, which is loosely based on history. If we're talking about royalty throughout history, you could argue that some of the reasons that the people got married was to procreate, but love was not a factor at all. It was political marriages to ally two families together, and that's not part of marriage the way it is anymore. So I bet even the definition back then, I don't know, whenever it first, this idea that he has first occurred in history, I bet that definition itself was also very different from the way it is now, because of the progression of the Enlightenment. So this is like reminding me of what Foucault talks about in terms of how the Enlightenment has led to progress, but it also has so many negative aspects, which is very contrary to what people like Jordan Peterson and James Lindsay say about him, of course, which is why I criticize them all the time. But anyway, I don't need to go on that tangent.
And then we had the other side who came along and said, well, it's not that. Okay, well then, like, what is it exactly? And I know you said, well, it's people who love each other. Two people love each other. Well, but then why two people? Why do they have to love each other? All these kinds of questions.
Like, those are aspects that are the same or similar to your definition between two people, but between two men or between two women, or between a man and a woman instead of just between a man and a woman. That aspect is not that different. And is he not saying that love should be a factor in why you get married to someone? It doesn't seem like he would be against that, but he doesn't say he's against that. So I don't know.
You get into what if they're in the same family? What if brothers and sisters want to marry? And I know every time that comes up, the advocates for
this is so stupid. This type of argument, like, you're going to allow gay marriage, and then eventually people are going to be marrying animals, and they're going to be marrying their cousins and marrying their siblings and stuff. Like, no one who advocates for gay marriage also advocates for bestiality and people marrying animals and people marrying their siblings and stuff like this. So this is just a stupid, giant fucking straw man argument.
Marriage will say, well, that's a slippery slope argument. That's a fallacious, but
it is.
It's actually not. It's like we're trying to get to what do you even think this institution is now, since you've rejected out what we were saying.
That's what gay marriage is.
And
that's the only difference between a man
I've never
and a
found a compelling definition. And any definition offered, it's like, well, what's even the point then? Why do we even need this now?
That's so stupid. If marriage doesn't follow into my own narrow conservative Christian definition of what marriage is, then it's not marriage, and we're destroying the definition of marriage. That's so fucking feelings based and not logical or rational at all. Like, supposedly these guys like Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro are genius rational philosophical thinkers, yet they're just completely operating on their own bias, like he is here 100%. If it doesn't fit my definition, then it is not marriage.
I just don't see how a gay marriage in any way damages a straight marriage.
It doesn't.
I don't see it at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. It just seems to me that people want to be look, if you wanted to look at logic, especially in our modern society, which is pretty fucked when it comes to relationships, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 50% of all marriages end in divorce anyway. They don't make it. You know, I don't know if anything would damage marriage and damage the institution of marriage is the option of divorce. I don't think gay people getting married in any way, shape, or form changes a bond that you have with your wife. It's just called...
Yeah, and if gay people are getting married, then you have more people who have a chance of a successful marriage, more people who have a chance of failing at it too, but it's more marriage overall. So you could possibly demonstrate that the success of marriage more so if you have gay people get married as well, showing the benefits of marriage itself, which should kind of be like a traditional conservative value just in terms of marriage itself, not necessarily gay marriage. But if you want to promote more the success of marriage itself, then if you could get past your homophobia that makes you not want two men to get married, then maybe that could promote more your other traditional conservative values.
Called marriage. It's a human invented thing.
It is.
If we decide that gay people can get married too, I just don't see how it damages anything. I don't think it tears down the definition of marriage in any way. It just opens up the possibility that people who are gay won't be discriminated against.
Yeah, I don't think that a gay couple existing directly impacts. You know, there's a gay couple and wherever, and I'm with my wife in our house. Like, obviously,
right.
There's not. But I'm not talking about on the individual level. I'm talking about
I appreciate him making these few concessions like that too, and how he mentioned how he wouldn't want to institute his views by law.
On the societal level.
Right.
I would agree that divorce, especially this no-fault divorce, rampant divorce, I don't think it's as high as 50%. I know that's often quoted. I'm not sure where that comes from, but it is high. It's too high. And
Chris Rock has a great joke about that. He said those are just the people with the courage to get out. It's like, how many cowards stay?
But it's also true that the advocates for what we call now traditional marriage, which I just call marriage.
Yeah, but it actually is just traditional marriage. I just quickly Googled this, and apparently, at least according to Google, almost 50% of all marriages in the United States will end in divorce or separation. Researchers estimate that 41% of all first marriages end in divorce. This is just a cursory Google search here, though, of course. 13 over a 5-year period in a study done in the Yukon from 2016 to 2020, the divorce rate was highest in the Yukon, 13 persons divorced per 1,000 married persons. I'm not sure what percentage that is. This one also says Canadian divorce statistics, 40% of marriages end in divorce. So it might not be 50%. It sounds like it's maybe more like 40%. That's not the majority, of course, but still a very large percentage of marriages.
But the advocates for traditional marriage put themselves at a disadvantage by especially in the churches, like allowing this rampant divorce to occur. And then you've already.
So not only is gay marriage destroying the very definition of marriage itself, to Matt Walsh, allowing people to get divorced at least so much in his mind is also destroying the traditional idea of marriage. So, like, you not only do you want to prevent gay people from getting married, you also want to force unhappy people be be in loveless marriages where they cheat on each other and they hate each other and there's no chance of them reconciling and they just drift apart, which happens with people, which Joe Rogan is about to get into. This is really, like he said, it's like I said, it's not 100% authoritarian, because he said he doesn't want to institute it by law, at least uh, in terms of procreation, as he was talking about. But that's still like 90% authoritarian.
Sort of given up on some marriage is supposed to be monogamous and permanent, as well as procreative.
See, a lot of people are polyamorous or in open marriages too. That's probably the minority of people, but it seems like he would logically assume that people who are in polyamorous or open marriages, or people who have threesomes as a couple with another person, those people are not actually married, even if there are two main people in the couple who they love more than anyone else and they have a kid together or something. Like I think it's that guy. What's that guy's name? Adam Savage, who is gay married and they've adopted a kid together, and they're also a polyamorous couple, but they just have threesomes with other guys or something. Plenty of straight couples do that too, of course, but it sounds like that wouldn't be marriage according to Matt Walsh either.
Well, you've given up monogamy and permanence, and so now it's not. That's two of the three legs gone. And so now this assault was waged.
But also in terms of gay marriage, though, no one is arguing necessarily that gay marriage should not be monogamous. Probably the vast majority of gay couples, just like heterosexual couples, want to have monogamous marriages. So no one, as far as I know, is saying that at least the majority of gay people want to be polyamorous and not be monogamous. Like, if he's saying that about gay marriage, which I'm admittedly not 100% sure he's saying here, then that's definitely not an aspect of gay marriage.
Waged on the procreative part of it, and it was difficult to withstand it because the institution had already been weakened. So I agree with you there. But my answer to that is to try to reinforce what marriage is, not to just give up on it entirely. And I still think,
like, expanding the definition doesn't mean giving up on it. It just means allowing more people to get married. If it doesn't fit your narrow definition, that doesn't mean it's not marriage anymore.
You're left with this question of, like, if marriage is not what I'm saying it is, then why do we even need it? What's the point? I mean, you're saying it's a man-made institution.
That's so stupid. It's such a massive logical jump to go from, if marriage is not what I say it is, to then why even bother? You could say, if marriage is not what I say it is, then how different should it be? Like, it's similar to the questions he was asking earlier. How many people could you marry? Can you marry animals? And I'm sure the answer to 99% of those questions would be no, because they want to, if people do want to change the definition according to his definition, then they want to expand it slightly. It's not like people want to be married. It's not that they want to destroy the idea of marriage. They want to get married too. Like, this is so stupid.
Yes,
but you're also, like, the way that you're presenting it, it's a totally meaningless institution. So
no,
they don't need it at all.
No, it's not meaningless. It's because it means something to the people that get married.
So it's just a subjective, symbolic thing. I mean, what
it is.
So if you're
kind of what it is. Look, there's a massive response.
Like Joe Rogan said, humans invented marriage. It's a social construct, which, contrary to what, again, people like Jordan Peterson and James Lindsay would say, does not mean that it's an inherently bad thing. It just means that humans created this concept, and this is what the concept means to humans. Like, even Matt Walsh's traditional idea of marriage is a social construct. That doesn't mean it's bad. It's good for him, and it's good for plenty of other people. And the way other people define marriage is good for them and not good for other people too. There's nothing wrong with that.
Responsibility when you're married and when you have children, to keep your family together and you raise and keep everybody happy and healthy. And there's great reward to that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work out. It's people change. People are fucked up. It doesn't always work. And so I don't think it should be outlawed because 50% of the people fall apart. Just like I don't think it has any effect whatsoever on a straight couple if a gay couple decides that they want to make it official. And that's what it is to them. It gives them a feeling that they're accepted and appreciated and that they're not discriminated against because they happen to be homosexual.
Yeah.
So, well, what you're articulating to me is the damage that's done by gay marriage to the institution of marriage.
But how is it done? How is
the gay couples not wanting to get discriminated against is the damage that gay couples are doing to marriage that is destroying the institution of marriage? So, I mean, it sounds like he's saying gay couples not wanting to get discriminated against destroys the idea of marriage. Is it because they can get married too? So should they just accept getting discriminated against? Like, what's the alternative here? That seems like a really homophobic way to look at it. I mean, or just a completely unthought of, not rational way at all to think about it, if I'm being as charitable as possible.
That in any way damage straight people?
Because we are making the institution meaningless.
But it's not meaningless.
Keep saying
it's very
bullshit.
meaningful to the people that have it.
Subjective, symbolic, and it's about your own personal feelings.
It is.
Isn't it though?
Well, no, I would say that it's not.
Well, if it's not subjective and it's not symbolic,
it codifies and protects and gives a name to a thing that actually exists, which are man, woman couples creating people, creating babies.
But just going back to procreation, which he already argued before, and Joe Rogan already knocked down that argument.
Not always.
Right, but again, that's still the nature of the union. So,
but what are the percentage of people?
It's not the nature of the union; it's the way you define the union.
That are married that don't have children. I bet it's pretty high amongst heterosexuals.
Probably.
Is there something wrong with that?
I think there is something wrong with that. I think there is something wrong with getting married and saying, oh, we're not gonna have any kids at all.
But why is there something wrong with that if someone's personal choice? Well, why is it wrong that two people are like, I am deeply committed to work and I don't want to sacrifice any of my career and I don't want.
So I just looked this up here and see, U.S. families shift as fewer households includes children. No. Oh, well, married couples with children were the majority decades ago. Now nearly 50% of U.S. households are childless. That means the majority, if that's true. I'm seeing other numbers like 45%. So let's say either a massive amount or even anywhere from a massive amount to the majority of marriages do not procreate, which means that according to Matt Walsh's definition, anywhere from a massive fucking amount to the majority of marriages are not actually marriages because procreation is not involved. So his definition is just collapsing all the time. And it's not that other people are collapsing it, it's that the logic behind his definition has no logical foundations for it. Oops.
To ruin a kid because I'm constantly at the office, but that's where I get deep satisfaction and that's what I'm focused on. And the woman says, that's great because I don't want children either. I really am attached to my interests and my career and what I like to do. That's not damaging your relationship with your wife and your family.
Nope.
I certainly don't think of it as a threat to my marriage or my family.
Yeah, it is a personal choice.
Right, but shouldn't people be allowed
like he just said? He just contradicted what he said earlier. He said marriage is not personal choice, and he's saying now it's personal choice. He might say he's not changing the definition here, but he's saying that it's personal choice as to whether you think that a gay couple getting married affects your marriage. So he thinks it does, but earlier he did actually admit that a gay couple getting married does not affect his marriage, but it breaks down the definition of marriage itself to him. So he did just contradict what he said earlier.
Those personal choices, like, isn't that a fundamental aspect of what it means to be American, to have that freedom?
Well, right. Yeah. But right now we're not talking about what people are allowed to do. I'm not saying
we're talking about marriage, gay marriage.
Okay. We were just discussing straight couples who choose not to have kids.
That's also a personal freedom issue, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'm not saying that straight couples should be legally required to have kids, but I if you're asking me,
yeah, again, I appreciate that he keeps mentioning that you shouldn't be legally required to have kids or anything like that.
It's the right choice to just get married and choose not to have kids ever. I do not think that that's the right choice. It's their choice, but people can make choices that are wrong. And you can disagree.
Choices that are wrong to you. There's no objective right or wrong in terms of whether people have kids or not. That's not an objective. That's not an objective truth claim that anyone make. It's not objectively right or wrong whether a married couple decides to have kids or not. You're choosing to define it that way because the definition of marriage is subjective. There's no objective biological definition of marriage, and there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't destroy the concept. Anyone can get married because they like the idea of marriage, which is a very religious idea in some ways. So I mean, like, people adopting that, I don't see why, if you're such a big advocate of marriage, you wouldn't like more people wanting to get married.
Wrong if they have a fulfilling and wonderful life together with that choice. If their thing is that they just want to have a bond between the two of them to just like take it to the next level, let everybody know, like, we are married. If I die, my money's going to go to Helen. And if Helen dies, I'm going to mourn her because she was my wife and now I'll be a widower. Like, to some people, that distinction gives them peace and security and makes them feel better about the relationship, that they're both so committed that they've legally signed documents that say that they're bound by law and under the eyes of God or whatever you believe in.
Yeah.
Very well said.
They're able to make that choice, but I think you're still rejecting one of the purposes of marriage.
According to you.
And in the scenario that you just outlined, you're also deciding to live a really self-centered life. You're saying,
what if you're not? What if your work is very charitable? What if it benefits humanity in a deep way? What if you spend a lot of time doing, healthcare work and, social work, and you're deeply committed to your community? It's not selfish at all. You're just dedicating your time to something other than raising new human beings.
Yeah,
you're dedicating your life to enhancing other human beings that are around you.
Equally morally justifiable.
It is a hypothetical, but so is yours, right?
Yeah, but I think most of the people that choose, like, we're not going to.
Yeah, you're both evaluating hypotheticals.
Kids, and the rate of those rates are declining, and the age when people first have kids is also going up, and all of that.
Yeah.
Most of the people that are making these choices, I don't think it's because they're involved in charity work. I do think that it is more the scenario you outlined in the first time around, which is just like, well, this is what I'm doing. I have my job. I don't want to give it up.
Yeah. But don't you think that
that's not self-centered? That's just people choosing to not have kids. It's not self-centered to not have kids. Like, especially, what if you think you're going to be fucking terrible parents and that turns out to be true and you're abusive or some shit and you damage your kids and ruin their future? Like, by definition, not every married couple should have kids. What if two alcoholics marry each other? What if two emotionally manipulative people marry each other? There are all sorts of people who shouldn't have kids, or maybe they should just decide for them fucking selves whether they have kids or not.
People should have the freedom to live their life in that way. I think human beings vary widely, in a huge way. And I think there's some human beings that find a very fulfilling life just reading books and traveling and experiencing different things and
sounds awesome.
Seeing art and doing whatever the fuck they want to do. And they don't necessarily have to have kids to live a fulfilling life that way. And if they choose to do that with someone who they have a loving bond with and who they get married to, I don't think it's a bad thing that they don't want to have kids.
Well, I think
it's not.
I guess we have to, maybe we're running into a question of now you get to the real fundamental question.
I think it's a fundamental freedom thing.
Yeah, we're not disagreeing, I guess, on the
Yeah.
freedom aspect of it, because again, I'm not saying that you should be required to have kids.
Well,
So
but you're imposing your sensibilities and what you think is important in life to other people. But everybody has a different idea of what's important in life without hurting anyone.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, what I'm saying is these people that are married, that don't have children, they're not harming anyone.
No.
They're not harming these unborn children that they never have. They're not harming anyone. And it doesn't affect your relationship with your family and your marriage at all.
Yeah, but
And
I'm not imposing myself on them or harming them by answering a question about
right.
how I feel about their choices.
Right, but nor are gay people doing that to you.
I think the harm comes from, on a societal level, when we start breaking down these basic central institutions, like the institution of the family and of marriage. That's where the harm comes from. And the more that,
doesn't this sound like a lefty argument, ironically? Like some lefties go around saying that words cause harm. They're like, he's kind of making almost an exactly identical argument to a lefty argument. If you don't accept my definition of this, then you're causing harm because your definition is objectively wrong and my definition is objectively right. That's exactly what these woke social justice warriors who he's always criticizing do. I bet that a lot of the like pro trans rights activist people have made exactly that type of argument, like the type of arguments he's making and the claims he's making about trans people are harmful and causing harms because they're the wrong definition. I bet they've made exactly those fucking arguments.
The more that people believe, the more that we build a society where it's believed that marriage is objectively meaningless, right? It's entirely subjective. It's just about making you feel better. The more that we build a society like that, I think that's where the harm comes in. The worse it is.
Why?
People are going to reject marriage.
And again, this is an ironically like authoritarian, like left-wing authoritarian sounding argument. If society is harmed if people don't agree with my definitions of words,
and that means more, fewer kids are being born. Also, more kids are being born in a context where they don't have that stable family structure. So the harm definitely comes. It may not be this immediate, connect the dots thing, but and we can already see that.
They change the culture in ways I don't like, therefore they're bad people. Oh, such a fucking stupid argument. Yeah, his argument for this specifically is really fucking dumb. I don't know that much about Matt Walsh in particular. I made one other video about him, about J.K. Rowling agreeing with him about trans stuff, but her saying that she still rejects him because he's made some very misogynistic comments, and he has an obviously very traditional conservative theocratic view of marriage and has really dumb views on gay marriage. I don't think he necessarily is secretly afraid that dicks are delicious, like Joe Rogan says in that joke in one of his comedy specials. I just think he has really fucking stupid arguments, unless he actually is a closeted homosexual in spite of being married with kids. I think it's probably much more likely that he just has a really stupid argument for how other people are destroying the idea of marriage if they don't define it the same way as me. Anyway, I've talked for long enough, so thanks for everyone for watching that. I wanted to make a video about that because people criticize Joe Rogan all the time, and I disagree with him sometimes too, like when he, like with that evil Decepticon shit, aka the virus. But he's not this bad person who's trying to cause harm to people, which I see a lot of hardcore lefties saying. He has some right-wing positions and positions that I disagree with, but he's genuinely a good person, and he has some really good positions, in my opinion, on subjects like gay marriage and plenty of other subjects like drug legalization and all sorts of other subjects. Anyway, Joe Rogan is a mixed bag like lots of people, but he's a good person. I think Matt Walsh seems to make really stupid arguments, just like how I criticize some conservatives like him and Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens, who are supposedly these masters of logic and good arguments who actually make intellectually bankrupt arguments all the fucking time. And yeah, Joe Rogan did a good job of taking down his dumb arguments to do with gay marriage. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. click that like button, share this everywhere, click that bell to be notified when I come out with new videos. I think I'm probably going to do that video I mentioned that I might do, comparing the Minority Report short story / novella by Philip K. Dick to the movie directed by Steven Spielberg and starring Tom Cruise, of course, and talk about how I think the movie is actually better in some ways because some of the changes just added a lot more complexity and meaning. And so, yeah, look out to that for that video next. And this weekend, I should ideally finally be talking about House of the Dragon with Dusty and Chris, who I always do movie and book chats with and talk about TV shows as well, of course. And yeah, my Patreon link is in the description of the video as always, so check that out. And yeah, like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. Keep having mindgasms. Most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all, and the groove is in the heart. And Matt Walsh makes dumb arguments, and Joe Rogan is awesome. All right. Thanks again, everyone, and adios until next time. Ta-ta, bitches.